Welcome to Marveled Media Podcast, where we talk about all things media, especially Marvel. I'm Blake, and I'm here with my co-host, Alex.
And welcome to episode 5, part 2 of Marvel Talk. Today we'll be discussing Spider-Man No Way Home spoiler-filled review, which means spoilers ahead. So if you don't want to hear any spoilers or plot points, please click off this video now. We do have a spoiler-free discussion and review on the channel, which you can watch by clicking on the YouTube card in the top right to watch that. But with that said, let's talk spoilers.
So, obviously, let's just start off with just kind of our overall reviews of the movie. Personally, I think this was, I said in the spoiler-free one, but as a Spider-Man arc, I think this one was really good and phenomenal. And just overall, this movie was very enjoyable from pretty much beginning to end. There's, even in the deeper, darker kind of scenes, it's just a really good movie.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels, in terms of this trilogy, it feels like the overall best Spider-Man themed movie. You know what I mean? It hits all the themes of what it means to be Spider-Man, and it gives us probably the most accurate Peter Parker. Honestly, I mean, he's struggling to now live in a world that knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man, so he has to deal with not only his people at school. He has to deal with literally he can't go anywhere because there's helicopters, just having a bird's eye view of everything he's doing at home when he's trying to get, just normal people stuff. He's just going out to get a donut or whatever. He literally can't go anywhere because now everyone knows that he is Spider-Man. And that doesn't only affect him, but it affects his friends around him. It affects Aunt May too. So it's definitely, it feels like the most Spider-Man story, especially
Right.
out of like the two previous ones that we've gotten. The two previous ones are I would say are kind of like the appetizer before the actual big meal, and this movie was full on from start to finish, just pure Spider-Man.
Right. I mean, I definitely think the first two were. I mean, a lot of people had the same kind of comments about the first two. It's like both villains are very much related to Tony Stark, like ties with Tony Stark. He's wearing his suit is, an iron suit made from Tony stuff. He has a voice, kind of helping him do stuff. He has the little spider arms that come out. There's a lot of Tony Stark influence, not only the villains, but his actual self too, because he was so much idolizing Tony, he just wanted to be him. And I think this one, we definitely got him being himself and being Peter.
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely felt like like everything was crashing on him, and yeah, I mean, his journey from start to finish was one of trying to do the right thing, but obviously questioning himself and his morals about halfway through the movie, and we'll get into that shortly. But I mean, honestly, this is a really good movie. Like, aside from the obvious, we got some other people in the movie too. Um,
Well, this is a spoiler
Excluding
one.
those,
We can just start talking about some of the other cameos that we saw.
it wasn't even cameos because they had full on like scenes.
That's true.
So, how about halfway through the movie, pretty much our Peter, is down bad. He had just lost his Aunt May, and he was grieving, obviously. So, and no one could get in contact with him. And then Ned, he had a sling ring. He had Doctor Strange's sling ring, and he started to want to open a portal to Peter, so that they knew where he was. And he actually managed to open one up. Thing is, we didn't get Peter. We did, but we got a whole different Peter. We got Andrew Garfield,
The goat.
which got a standing ovation there. Um, at first, we couldn't tell because he was kind of far away, but
You could tell. You're kidding. You could tell it was him.
yeah, but I couldn't tell if it was Toby or if it was Andrew because
Nah,
it was kind of far away.
as soon as that portal opened and you saw him wave, just his mannerisms, I was like, that's Andrew.
Yeah.
and he came
and then he
running
kept
out,
on running closer, and
and
then
then he takes
once
off
he
his mask,
unmasked,
and we see him.
yeah, it was that was a great moment there. And and then Ned tries to do it again to see if they can open a portal to the right one this time. And then the goat Toby comes through in like normal street clothes.
Not the goat,
And
the OG. Don't mix it up. The goat is Andrew Garfield.
Cap.
What? Bro, what are you talking about?
The OG
no,
is Toby.
he's the goat because he started everything.
Yeah, the
Okay.
OG. He's the OG.
Hey, who got 3 movies and who didn't?
Andrew Garfield could have future movies.
Who?
Yeah, whatever. Anyways, so then now and they're in this in Ned's, what was it, grandma's house, I want to say, or his mom's house or whatever. And there was 2 different Peters there, and we get a brief exchange between the 2 previous Spider-Mans. And then we cut to them now meeting up with our current one, and kind of having a heart-to-heart because Peter had just lost his Aunt May, and then in order for them to connect with him, then they share their experiences. And obviously, I'll let Blake talk about Andrew's, but Toby starts to share that that same line, with great power comes great responsibility. That's what his Uncle Ben's told him before he died. And then Peter starts to be like, okay, well, and then I'll let Blake say what Andrew said.
Yeah, Andrew, they were all kind of on the rooftop talking, and obviously Tom Holland was very, that Peter Parker. It's going to be confusing, but we're just going to say Tom Holland's Peter was obviously very emotional, having just lost Aunt May in the, past hour, under an hour, however long. It was very short, and he was very bitter and very mad, saying, like, you all need to go back. Like, this isn't my job anymore. Just very much like, you guys get out of here. I don't care what happens. If you kill him, you kill him, but I'm done. I've had enough. And then, like he said, they have that heart-to-heart of, like, you lost somebody, and he's like, I lost Gwen, in Amazing Spider-Man 2, Gwen Stacy died falling down because of the Green Goblin, that one. And he was like, I lost Gwen. And obviously, as Alex said, Toby was like, I lost my Uncle Ben. And Toby mentioned how that night he went and wanted the guy to die who killed his Uncle Ben, who he thought killed his Uncle Ben. And he said how I got what I wanted to happen, but it just made me bitter. And those two talk about at some point they stopped pulling their punches, and they were just very angry and bitter and not, the symbol that those people who died wanted them to be. And they remembered that those people died for a reason, and they need to get back to being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And they were both there like almost like a big brother type thing to Tom Holland, trying to, they both said they wanted to keep that from happening to him. They wanted him to know that she didn't die for no reason, and that you shouldn't just, send everybody back. If they die, they die, and just be this angry Spider-Man. You should remember what she stood for, what she wanted you to be, and kind of live up to that. So, I mean, that scene was, again, this movie has a lot of scenes that are deeper and emotional, and the acting in them all are amazing. I think we've already talked about it. When Aunt May dies, Tom Holland does a phenomenal job in that scene, and then both Toby and Andrew did really good when they first met him, and you could tell in their faces and that they were feeling exactly what Tom was feeling, because they've been through it, and you could see how they wanted to make sure he didn't end up how they did for that time after they lost their loved one.
Right.
And then I would say this one was definitely more of a cameo, but we got to see Daredevil, Matt Murdock. Well, we didn't see Daredevil, we saw Matt Murdock. But that was definitely more of a cameo. He had he was probably on screen for 20, 30 seconds maybe, if that.
Yeah, about 30, 40 seconds, yeah.
Which, as you and I called earlier in our Hawkeye videos, we said Fisk gets introduced the day before Spider-Man. Matt Murdock gets introduced in Spider-Man. Episode 6 has a bigger role of Fisk. More than likely, no Matt Murdock or Daredevil will be appearing. I'd be very surprised if they appeared in Hawkeye, but Fisk probably will see a little bit more of him. So that
Yeah,
was cool
and
to
he
see
was
him.
just talking to Peter. Yeah, no, yeah, and he was talking to Peter and obviously everyone else in the room, and he was just saying how, probably the accusations were going to stick, except for Happy. Happy was going to have quite a bit of an issue with that, and obviously that kind of got a laugh out, and then I guess a Mysterio supporter threw a brick through the window, and Matt just caught it without even looking, and and then Peter was like, "How the hell did you do that?" He's like, "I'm just a very good lawyer." Yes, you are, Matt. Yes, you are.
So
But
it was
it was
nice to see.
great.
We got him
Yeah,
confirmed.
Charlie Quebec. Oh, I love Marvel so much.
Other than that, I can't really think of too many cameos or surprise appearances. I mean, I say any other as if those three weren't huge.
Yeah, those were huge. Well, throughout the whole movie, because I will say this, they de-aged Doc Ock. So they de-aged him. They de-aged Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin a tiny bit, which actually looked really good. Holy crap! And we kind of briefly mentioned this in our spoiler-free review of the movie, but wow, they've really come a long way since even when they first tried it on Tony in Civil War. I think that was
Yeah.
before Ant-Man, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and then it wasn't even that bad, but now it's like holy crap! They made them look like they were ripped out straight from that movie into this one, and especially Willem Dafoe. Holy crap,
No,
man!
he looked so good.
He looked really good. He acted his ass off. Holy crap! And there was a report out there that the only way that he wanted to return, or that he would return, is if he was allowed to do his own stunts. And the man's like 66 or something.
Well, he
And
said
holy
he only
shit,
would
he
return
killed it.
not only if he could do stunts, but he had stunts.
Yes.
He said he wasn't going to come back as like some kind of cameo. He's like, if I come back, I'm having some fighting scenes to include me, and I'm doing them.
In fact, one of the first things I said to John and Amy, basically when they pitched it to me before there was even a script, was, listen, I don't want to just pop in there as a cameo or just fill in close-ups. I want to do the action because that's fun for me. And also, it's really impossible to add any integrity or any fun to the character if you don't participate in these things, because all that action stuff informs your relationship to the characters and the story, and also allows you, it makes you earn your right to play the character in a funny way.
Yeah, and he killed it. Holy crap. You felt like that. There's a scene in this movie when, he kind of briefly after showing up at the start, he then breaks his Green Goblin helmet and kind of, symbolizes him kind of putting the darker side of him behind him briefly. And obviously, that darker side is not gone. It's just dormant for a little period of time. And then for a while, we just see Norman Osborn. And there's a twist where then Peter kind of senses the turn of Norman back into Green Goblin. And once Green Goblin shows back up, oh my God, shit goes down. It gets wild.
Shit going down, we mean Tom Holland going down through every single floor, getting thrown around.
Yeah. No, I think, because the villains in this movie were kind of hesitant with Tom Holland's Peter. One, they didn't even know what the hell was going on until it was explained to them when they were captured. And two of them, I would say probably the Lizard and Sandman, just wanted to go home because, they were just sucked out and they weren't going to die. But the other ones that were set to die because their fate was that they were supposed to die. Green Goblin with his glider impaled, Doc Ock sacrificing himself, and obviously,
Electro.
yeah, overloading Electro's body, but they were sucked the moment before they actually died. So, especially Electro and Green Goblin, they do not want to go back. But Tom wants to, kind of cure them, and then that way that could potentially change their future. But like all good things, Green Goblin has to come in and ruin the show, or in this case, kind of spice things up, and that's when kind of the villains are forced to then really become villains, and bail, and Electro, I think he sends Doc Ock flying, and the lizard just breaks out of that feast truck and just dips, and then Green Goblin doesn't care. He is fighting his way out. He fought through. I think he briefly fought Sandman, or no, or am I thinking?
No, they pretty
on?
much just left. Sandman and Electro pretty much as soon as the turn
Oh, that's
happened.
right. Yeah, because they created that storm, and then they just dipped, and it was just Norman and Peter and Aunt May, and holy crap, Willem Dafoe put in work. Holy crap, he just wailed on Tom. I mean, and it wasn't like a one sided thing, because Tom
It was
briefly in
no,
that
it was one sided.
No.
In that fight scene, it was one sided. Tom was getting destroyed.
It was like well, I don't want to say.
If we had to say percentages, it was at best for Tom, it was 80-20. At
No.
best, he had 20% of that fight, and he was winning, or had it. Other than that, Goblin was just throwing this man through floor after floor, just destroying him. And then finally, they get all the way to the bottom. Aunt May's there. She tries to hit Norman with the antidote to get rid of the Green Goblin and just have Norman. It doesn't work. Then we see Norman hit her with the glider, kind of stabbing her. Man throws a pumpkin bomb. He dips. Aunt May is dying there. Peter's trying to help her. There's military or police people showing up on the scene.
Yeah, the DODC.
And then that's when Aunt May eventually dies. Before she dies, she says, "With great power comes great responsibility." She passes away. He has to run, and then that kind of catches us up to where he's by himself grieving. And then, as Alex was explaining earlier, that's when Ned tries to call him. Spider-Man come in, they find him, and that's all caught up there. But yeah, I mean, it was really interesting to see the way that they kind of had these villains were all so on board with him so early.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were, all of them just walked with him just into Happy's apartment, and we're all just like, yeah, this kid, he can fix us. Like, yeah, we're all on his side right now.
Well, yeah, because right before that, Tom gave MJ the box, and told her in front of them, like, if you don't hear from me or whatever, click the button, and they're going back home. So
Right.
Yeah, so that was kind of their choice: either follow Tom or pretty much get sent back to their deaths. So and that's when the lizard's like, well, that's not much of a choice now, is it? And then we cut to them go to Happy's condo.
But I mean, and then once we brought in Andrew and Toby, the three of them together, just, it was so funny. I think Marvel did such a good job. Like, there were so many funny callback and references to their own movies and to stuff like that. That was so, just overall, it did not disappoint. This was a very, very heavily, like, I would say, fan-influenced movie.
Mm-hmm.
And they knocked it out of the park. They brought us back to Spider-Man we wanted to see. They had the humor we wanted to see. They even had references to stuff we wanted to see. Just overall, I mean,
and just like
they
that,
did
like
such a good job.
the kind of like the interactions between all three of them was just like nice to see, because it's like, obviously the two previous Spider-Mans were in two different times. Like, they don't even, like, when Tom was kind of saying, like, yeah, we're not doing really well at this, we're usually on our own, And then Tom's like, well, I've been on a team before, and he mentions that he was on the Avengers, and then both of them were like, yeah, that's cool. What is that? And they're like, what you guys don't have the Avengers? I know. I'm like, okay, well, and there's like some things where a Spider-Man had a villain, but the other one didn't have that villain. I think both Toby and Tom were like, yeah, we've both fought aliens before, and then Andrew's like, well, I want to fight an alien, and then it's like, all I have is a big like a Russian dude in a
big rhino suit.
Yeah, he's like, that's just lame. And then Toby's like, no, you're amazing. It's like, say it, you're amazing. And I mean, that kind of just alludes to him being the amazing Spider-Man, But that was.
And we also got some funny interactions with the whole web thing of Toby produces his webbing. He doesn't need like a web fluid, and
right, he has the
Andrew and
webs.
Tom both have web shooters. They don't actually produce it, and we had some funny moments with that. And there's a funny moment about Ned asking for Peter, and then all three of them are like, yeah, and Ned's like, no, Peter Parker, and they're like, yeah, we're all Peter Parker. So there's just, I would say, Marvel has had a past of sometimes, I would say Endgame is very heavy of this, of just jokes that are just forced down your throat. And it's like, okay, move on. This isn't funny. I felt like there was really no point in this movie that had like a stupid kind of joke. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no.
Like, I don't think there was any part of like all the Spider-Man together. I feel like every time there's like a joke or something, it landed.
It did.
Which I thought was just a lot of respect to Marvel for doing that and pulling that off. And just pulling everything they pulled off this movie. And then I think the big thing here is the end. I would say I'm torn on the ending.
Or like the end fight scene.
No, I was talking about the end.
Okay. Well, okay. If you want to go there, that's fine.
Oh, if you want to talk about the fight scene, go ahead. You can talk about that stuff.
Okay. Well, before we get to the end, so let's just give some context to this. About halfway through the movie, Tom Holland, Spider-Man, is, he chooses to help these villains, not just send them to their deaths. And obviously, Doctor Strange being like, he's like, I'm sorry, kid. Like, I have to do this or else things could get worse. And, I mean, it does get worse. But Peter fights Doctor Strange in this really awesome fight scene, by the way. It was really good. It was, I mean, wow. Hats off to Jon Watts for directing that scene. Because up until that point, I think only the I can't remember his name, but only Doctor Strange's like the first director has done like that full on city bending sequence. The Russo brothers only made kind of Doctor Strange look weird by doing like the hundreds of Doctor Stranges and all of that stuff, but we haven't seen that like world bending magic since that movie. But it was directed really well here, and that at the end it kind of ends up biting Doctor Strange in the ass because Peter's pretty good at geometry, so he knew where to web everything, and it ended up trapping Doctor Strange in the mirror dimension. So Doctor Strange about halfway through got pretty much sidelined because he got stuck in the mirror dimension for, what do we say, 12 hours just hanging there.
Yeah, I was like, 12 hours.
And then towards the end, he shows back up. He's like, I've been hanging for 12 hours. And throughout that whole fight, it was the three Peters versus the villains. And then they were picking them off one by one, which is done really well, obviously. Through all that, they had their callbacks. Toby, I guess the first one was Sandman, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they were trying to get to Sandman, and all three Peters Andrew threw the antidote to Tom, who then threw it up to Toby, and then saved Flint Marco. And wow, actually, now thinking about it, they also DH'd him too because he looked almost identical to Spider-Man 3.
Oh yeah,
it was crazy how like they DH'd him too. because throughout the whole movie he was just in like sand form. And then they picked off Electro with the help of Doc Ock. And Electro had the upper hand against the two other Spider-Man, and then Doc Ock came in and helped them. And then pretty much the last one left was Green Goblin, and I guess the Statue of Liberty kind of falls apart. I mean, like the new additions fall apart. We saw it in the trailer. MJ falls.
Oh, that scene.
Yeah,
That scene.
I'll let
just...
I'll let Blake take it away because this is what he was waiting for.
So as he was talking about the Statue of Liberty where the fight's happening is falling apart, MJ is falling off. Zendaya is falling off of that, and Tom sees this. He goes to jump to catch her, and it's almost, they shot it almost exactly like the same kind of point of view as in Amazing Spider-Man 2, where it's kind of from Peter's perspective and we see her. And he reaches his hand out as we saw in the trailer, but then just as that happens, Green Goblin comes up with his glider and just hits Tom out of nowhere, getting him completely out of the picture, so MJ's falling, and then Andrew Garfield is like, he yells no, and he just jumps off and just slings himself down there, catches her, and lands. And obviously, amazing recall to Amazing Spider-Man 2, he catches her and he's like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah." And you can see he's tearing up and getting upset. And she's like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." But obviously that scene was just, personally, I mean, it's very clear. I've said this before. I love the Amazing Spider-Man series. I love Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. I loved all of that. When I saw Amazing Spider-Man 2 in theaters, I cried when Gwen Stacy died. It hit. And in that moment, I honestly had a tear in my eye when he caught her, because I loved that redemption arc for him to catch her. I thought, once again, Marvel just did a phenomenal job, knocked it out of the park. And I hope somehow we get Andrew Garfield to continue on in the Sony-verse as a Spider-Man.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
Because I know this is kind of, out of what's happening here, but we're just kind of on that topic. We see in one of the end credit scenes, Venom gets sent back, as all of the other people who got sent back that got pulled in. He got sent back to his universe. And so I don't know if maybe Sony is going to have Eddie Brock, that Venom's still a thing in that universe, and maybe in that universe it's Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. I don't know. I hope somehow they tie him in. And we'll talk about that end credit scene later, because I have definitely some questions about it. But yeah, I just had to get that part out. That amazing job by Marvel to give Andrew Garfield his redemption, and that scene was once again another powerful one to me.
Absolutely. And then just continuing off of that, like Blake said, Green Goblin kind of smacks Tom out of the way with his glider, and then it cuts back to him, and then Tom grabs a pumpkin bomb from his glider and sticks it under, and then it blows up, and then they both land on the what would have been the shield for the Statue of Liberty that's now upside down next to the water. And then holy shit, Tom then returns the favor and starts wailing on Green Goblin to the point where he's about to kill him. And both Toby and Andrew see this. They're like, okay, we have to stop him before he makes a mistake and do something that he would regret. And then Toby goes up. He gets right before Tom grabs the glider, and it looks like he's about to stab Green Goblin with his own glider. Toby then stops it, which I thought he was just going to jump in front of it and get stabbed by Tom, but I mean, thinking about it, I think it makes more sense having him stop it than just jump in front of it.
100%.
Because the whole point is to do something that he wouldn't regret.
Right.
So he stops the glider, and then he kind of looks at him. He's like, no. And then obviously Norman, is still on the ground. He I guess at that point they all kind of upgraded their suits, and he had a kind of like arm gauntlet that had like a retractable blade. And he stabbed Toby through the back, and for a moment there, I thought he was gonna die.
I did too.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh shit, they're gonna kill him!" Like fuck. And then he falls down, and then Tom was just like, "Okay, well, what the fuck? And then Andrew has the antidote. He throws it to Tom. Tom, no look, catches it, stabs Green Goblin. He then reverts back to Norman. He's like, what did I do? And then we see Toby, and actually Toby's fine. It was a joke where he's like, hey, I've been stabbed before. It's not that bad. And then during all of this, Doctor Strange is trying to kind of, I don't know, contain the spell, because the spell is now spreading since Green Goblin earlier in the fight put a pumpkin bomb in that box that you guys see in the trailer, and it exploded, which that box was containing the actual spell. And now the spell is out, and he was containing it, but he couldn't contain it any longer. And the only way for him for the spell to revert is if everyone forgot who Peter Parker was in general. So then Tom's like, yeah, just do it. And then Dr. Strange's like, are you sure? Because no one's gonna know who Peter Parker is, not even me. He's like, yeah, just do it. So I think that was a huge, like, a nice character arc for him, because at the beginning, the whole reason why we got these villains and these Peter Parkers was because Tom wanted only a certain amount of people to know that he was still Spider-Man, but instead it brought people who knew that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, which now obviously, all the villains from the previous movies, and obviously Peter Parker knows who Peter Parker is. So both Andrew and Toby came to this universe. That's why they were in the movie. But I just thought it was nice because the whole reason why was because he was trying to be, I don't want to say he was kind of selfish, but he was trying to live his life back the way it was before Mysterio kind of outed him and told the world that he was Spider-Man.
Right.
But at the very end, he was completely selfless. He sacrificed everything that he had worked for up until that point, from Civil War all the way up till now. Because, now Happy doesn't even know who he is. Obviously, he has no more family left since Aunt May is now gone. So I guess, on that part, it's not that bad. But
MJ and Ned
his girlfriend, his friend, gone. They don't know who he is. And, he actually goes through with it. And at the very end, he's like, yeah. And he hugs the other two Peters, like, thank you for your help. And that was a nice moment too. And then Toby's like, or no, and then Andrew is like, that hurt, didn't it? And he's like, yeah, it still hurts. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then and then slowly they both go back. The villains go back. And then Peter then says his goodbyes to MJ and to Ned. And, that was a heartfelt moment. He realizing that he's no longer going to have them. Doctor Strange, he already said his goodbyes, and then the spell goes through, and then we get to the end, which I'll hand that off to Blake.
So, as before their goodbyes to MJ and Ned, they both said, or Tom said, like, I'll fix this, like, I'll find you guys, I'll remind you, everything will be okay. And they're both like, you better find us. And MJ says, you better find me, or I'll figure it out. I figured out once who you were. I'll, do it again. And then, like he said, spell goes through. Everybody kind of goes back. We see Peter go to some kind of coffee donut shop that MJ works at. He sees Ned there. He sees MJ there. He goes to talk to her, and he has like basically he had like a script he was holding and like rehearsing on his walk there about trying to jog her memory in a way. And then he sees her. She has a Band-Aid on her forehead from a cut that she got during the whole battle. And he said, does it hurt? And she's like, no, not anymore. And I think that was the moment for him. He realized, if I go through with this, I'm just putting her and also Ned back in risk. And he didn't want to go through that again. So then he ended up just buying a coffee from her. I don't even think he talked to Ned at all, did he? He just looked at Ned. Yeah, he never
No,
even
he's
went up
just
and
like
talked to him.
Mhm.
And he just asked her, he was like, "Oh, are you excited for MIT?" And she was like, yeah. And so he didn't go through with telling her everything there. And he basically just walked out of the coffee shop. And then we see him in his new apartment, which is very reminiscent of the original Tobey Spider-Man, of just this crappy one-room apartment, just just an awful apartment because he's broke and he has nobody to live with now.
Right.
And then we see him move into this apartment, and then he's checking his phone because he has like all the police scanners. He hears stuff. We see him put on this new suit that it looks like he must have sewed himself, and it's
Mhm.
very, very heavily influenced by Tobey Maguire's and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man suit kind of combined. It's very much a OG Spider-Man. It's red, blue, a lot of red, a lot of blue, big spider. It's, basically,
Yeah.
the Spider-Man we're used to seeing in the comics. So it's almost like this trilogy we just saw is like, now we're pretty much to him being actual Spider-Man now. He doesn't
Right.
have the Tony Stark tech. He doesn't have the Tony Stark background. He doesn't have the connections anymore. It's literally, he's Spider-Man. He knows it. Nobody else knows it. He's broke. He has his own suit that he made himself.
He's living in an apartment.
Yeah, and if, assuming we are getting a new Tom Holland trilogy with everything that's been talked about, it's going to be very much, like Spider-Man is almost, you can almost argue it's kind of where like the original Spider-Man, like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Mans were. Like this was like
Mhm.
everything that happened before then in a way. So I mean, I'm excited if they do continue on with Tom Holland to see this Spider-Man we're getting, because he's now definitely a more matured Peter Parker. He knows what's at risk being Spider-Man. He understands how it affects his loved ones. I mean, personally, like I said, I think this was an amazing, just actual Spider-Man story.
Yeah.
We saw him fully understand what it means to not only be Spider-Man, but we've seen this kind of tied into Hawkeye, of what it means to be a superhero. Those around you are at risk. We saw with Hawkeye, we see Clint Barton trying to tie up the things he did at Ronin so that they don't come back to haunt his family. And we're seeing Peter realize that being a superhero is not all, it's not all happy all the time. You're not getting to live your life and then go beat up a bad guy, arrest them, whatever you want to, and then move on. There's actual harms for you and your loved ones. And I mean, I'm a little torn on how I feel with the whole MJ and Ned not knowing him and where they're going with it. I don't know what your
Yeah.
thoughts are, but I'm a little bit torn on that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I guess it was the right thing to do,
I agree.
right? Because it's like now, like you said, it kind of is now picking up kind of where, Toby's in probably Spider-Man 2 started, where he's now in college, he's on his own, he doesn't have a girlfriend, he doesn't have pretty much any friends. His I guess in that movie, his one friend was Harry, but Harry was, you know, swearing revenge on Spider-Man, so he was doing his own thing. So he didn't really have anybody. He just lived in an apartment on his own. Went to school, and then on his off time, he would then be Spider-Man. But yeah, I mean, I think it was necessary because a lot of people gripe with this trilogy. I mean, probably not this movie, but the first two for sure, and even his appearances in Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame, which is crazy to think about because we've had Tom Holland for what now, 6 movies, 3 appearances, and 3 solo movies, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So
And potentially a whole new trilogy.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I mean, I guess that was kind of their plan, was to get a younger actor to play Peter, to kind of put him through this journey. And you know what, I think I actually enjoyed it because we got to see him, interact with other Marvel heroes. He kind of was taken under Tony's wing. He had him as a mentor. Obviously, we know what happens to Tony, and then he then had to live in a world after Tony, and then now he has to live in a world where no one knows who he is. And I think that was a good journey. It kind of brought some humility to him, maturity for sure.
Definitely in this
and
movie.
I think it was much needed, from start to finish, from his first appearance in Civil War to now. I feel like we finally got, I think if I had to say what this brief time period of Spider-Man was kind of like the period before he truly became Spider-Man.
Oh yeah.
He just had the name, he just hadn't earned it yet. He was still very much learning the ropes, and learning what it means to be Spider-Man full time. And now, going into this next trilogy, it's going to be him, with all of that knowledge. Obviously, no one knows that
Right.
other than him, and he has all that experience now, and now I think he's fully ready to then embrace that role now.
No, I definitely agree that now he's now officially Spider-Man in a sense. And I'm definitely excited to see this trilogy, to see him as the full Spider-Man, because this all has been a journey to this point.
You know what? And I think it wasn't a surprise that they brought the other two Spider-Men there for that reason alone, because
Right.
that kind of showed him what his future could be.
Right.
And I mean, I'm not saying that's going to be the exact same, like a carbon copy, but learning from them in that brief time that they had those conversations, that like kind of that also kind of helped. In a way, they were kind of mentoring him towards his potential future. And obviously, it's no surprise that Marvel and Sony chose to have them in there, along with obviously the fan service. But they obviously serve more purpose than just,
Absolutely.
oh hey, look, we finally got him back.
Right. I will say this though, and this doesn't as much have to do with actual Spider-Man, but Tom Holland himself has commented about not wanting to be Spider-Man through his 30s or something, into his 30s, and we now have this new trilogy, and he's, I think, 26 or something. I understand sort of where he's coming from, of not just wanting to only be Spider-Man. He wants to do other films. But you definitely can do other films. And I'm not going to say, like, he owes it to Marvel, but part of me is a little annoyed with him saying that, and, like, almost not, it doesn't sound like he really doesn't want to do the next trilogy all that much. And a part of me is like, hey man, you knew what you signed up for. You knew they wanted you for like at least a decade. Look at Robert Downey Jr. He's only from when was Civil War? 2017?
2016.
2016? Okay, so he's like 5 years in at most, somewhere around there.
I think he's 6 years in.
No, he did not come around in 2015.
Well, when the film was shot.
I don't know. I don't think it was that long. I think he's at most 5 years in, around 5-ish years in. And already to be like acting like, oh, all that stuff. Part of me is like, you knew what you signed up for. Like, Robert Downey Jr. was a part of this for over a decade. Chris Evans was around for almost exactly a decade. A lot of those people were here for a decade. You knew Spider-Man as a pillar. Like, I don't know. Part of me is just a little annoyed about that. It's like, you signed up to be a part of the MCU for a huge role. The other huge roles were here for... Hawkeye is over a decade now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Part of me is just a little annoyed about that. It's like, I would think Spider-Man is a huge honor. And as long as they're still making good movies, I think you should be wanting to participate in those movies.
Oh no, for sure, and I think he kind of cleared it up where he said, he didn't mean it like that, where he didn't want to like keep on playing it. He just wanted to, make way for other potential Spider-Man like Miles Morales. Like he didn't want to, kind of be in the spotlight and take their time away,
Right.
potentially, from introducing a new one. But he said, if obviously if the scripts are good and everything like that, obviously he's gonna be more than happy to keep on playing it. He just said that eventually, if it comes time, he'd be more than happy to, kind of pass on the torch to a new Spider-Man. And you know what? I feel like I don't know if it'll be the next movie, but for sure, like maybe around towards the end of 2 or the third one. He might then become, he might find a Miles Morales in the MCU, and then
I don't want that
kind
though.
of train him.
I don't want that. We just now saw this Peter Parker get done with all of his training, whatever you want to say. He's just now Spider-Man. Can we enjoy that for a couple movies, a couple years before we have to do this all over again with a Miles Morales or whoever's next? Like, we just spent this entire time was basically all backstory to this point. I want to see this Spider-Man for a couple years, a couple solo movies, before I have to go back to seeing a new person's uncle or aunt die, tell them great power is great responsibility, and go for it. Like, I don't know. Personally, I'm just like, we've gone through so much to get to this point. I want us to enjoy this Spider-Man and see Tom Holland as Spider-Man for 5 to 6 years, couple solo movies, couple, group movies, see him kind of be the Spider-Man we want, see him be a leader, whatever. I don't want his replacement in the next 2 to 3 years. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. To me, it's just, and obviously it's Marvel, but I just think, like, I don't know. I don't think we need to be recycling already, is what I'm saying. Let's enjoy this.
Oh, yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna have him, have his first movie, and then you're gonna do like a bunch of team up movies, cameos, and all that stuff. Then he'll get a second, and then some more of that stuff. Because it's been a couple of years since his first appearance. So, and he's had what, six appearances,
right?
3 solo movies and 3 cameos, or not cameos, but 3, kind of side character appearances.
Well, I would say Endgame, he was definitely a cameo.
Yeah.
I mean, Endgame, he hardly had, I don't even know if he had 2 full minutes of screen time. So, I don't even know if you really count Endgame, but I don't know. That's just personally, I'm just kind of like, I want to enjoy where we're at right now. And I think it was a phenomenal movie. I think, once again, we saw him make a very mature, grown-up decision to be like, it's fine if they forget who I am. I'm ready to move forward. And then to kind of finish this out in a way, you have the first end credit scene of Venom. Tom Hardy Venom is in Mexico. He's like talking to this guy about like what all is going on. He's like, oh, maybe I should pay this Peter Parker, which didn't make sense to me. Why was he there?
Because in his universe, he was. I think he was in Mexico. In his
I know,
universe,
but why
on the beach?
Didn't everyone get pulled in who knew Peter Parker? That's what Doctor Strange said.
Yes.
He didn't. There wasn't a Spider-Man in his world. He didn't know.
If you remember at the end of Venom 2, where he's like that all symbiotes have like this,
right? They have billions of years of whatever
of knowledge spread throughout the multiverse, and they know a Spider-Man, they know Peter Parker, so maybe Venom does. He just never said anything about it, but Eddie doesn't.
Right, I guess.
And that's what he said. The shit that he knows would blow his mind.
Right.
And then obviously they get transported into this universe, and then obviously we cut
see
to
the
this end
right?
scene where
I guess the symbiote.
where Eddie's trying to learn, like, so there's a guy named Hulk.
Right.
There's a guy in a tin suit who flies around. He's like, what the fuck's going on? And then Venom the whole time is like, all right, let's just go. Let's just go to the pool.
I guess,
and
the symbiote part of Venom. I couldn't know, but and then he got sent back to his world, and part of the symbiote got left behind. So we're gonna see Venom in some sort in Marvel to deal. Tom Holland will have to deal with.
Right, which doesn't necessarily mean that we won't get Tom Hardy, because if you think about it, Tom Hardy voices Venom, and he might be the voice inside of Tom's head. So I guess they're both Tom, so that's kind of weird. So say at some point, I don't know if it'd be the next movie, but for sure, Tom Holland is going to get the symbiote. That's when the symbiote then takes some of the power from Spider-Man. He then gets like the white spider logo. Right. He gets to shoot webs, not those tentacles or whatever. And but the whole time he has Tom Hardy's voice and obviously, yeah, but Venomized, obviously. and then maybe some way somehow something happens. Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock then comes in after maybe his third movie, because I know they're working on a third movie with Tom Hardy for Venom.
Oh, okay.
So maybe between then and now, some way he's like, okay, yeah, a piece of my symbiote is gone. Let's go get it or something. I don't even know what they're gonna do.
Right.
Like, for all we know, they can have like another multiverse, because this is still very much prominent. Obviously, going into the next film, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, shit could go down.
Right.
So we still don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, who knows if Venom, the symbiote, attaches to Tom Holland at some point. Maybe it could attach to Ned. Maybe it could attach to Flash. Who knows who it'll find its way connecting to and find its way into Tom's life. Maybe Zendaya, MJ, who knows. But I mean, overall, like I said, this movie was very enjoyable. It had a lot of laughs. It had serious moments. The ending
The action was well choreographed.
Right. The ending was very much mature on his part. And just overall, just one of the best, well-rounded Spider-Man stories we've seen, I would say.
Yeah, I would definitely put it in top 3 Spider-Man, and then it's definitely up there in terms of MCU.
Right.
But for my final review of it, I know I just watched it like yesterday, and I said this in my spoiler-free review. I'm gonna give it about a 9 out of 10.
Right. Which, yeah, I would say it's probably up there for top 3 Spider-Man, because you have Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, obviously at the top of everyone's Spider-Man list.
What? No. Stop it. Get some help.
And then everything else.
Hold on a moment there. No. I'm gonna say you were very much wrong on that one, sir. I'm gonna say Spider-Man 2. Tobey Spider-Man 2, that is a classic, and a lot of the stuff that happened in that movie is obviously referenced in this one, so I love that.
There's a lot. Every movie has some kind of reference. They reference so much.
Even Tobey referenced that he fought like an alien, which a black goo, and it was obviously referenced to Spider-Man 3, and obviously Flint Marko's in this movie too. So yeah, they even referenced the somewhat mediocre one too. Hey, listen, okay, very quickly, Spider-Man 3 was not as bad as everyone says it is. It has issues for sure, but the moments that hit, they hit.
Yeah.
The moments that don't hit, they really don't hit, but that's okay. I still take it above Amazing Spider-Man 2. Not above the first one. Not above the first one.
No.
You're wrong. But it's still above that one.
No.
Very, very right above it. If the writing in Amazing Spider-Man 2 was just a slight bit better, I think I would have put that above that one.
Died.
That is not enough for me to put it above that one.
That was a more emotional, hard-hitting scene than all of Tobey's trilogies had combined.
Cap.
Anyways, just this is going to be I know I've said this is my final thought like twice or 3 times, but here's my real final thought. Marvel, which maybe I shouldn't get into this right now because this episode is getting a little lengthy for us, but Marvel movies, the past 3, where is the connection? Where is the tie-in happening? From Shang-Chi to Eternals to Spider-Man, our next movie is Doctor Strange.
Oh, real quick before you finish that thought, something else that we forgot to mention as well. Wong actually is the Sorcerer Supreme.
Oh yeah,
because
that's right.
Doctor Strange got snapped out of existence for 5 years. So on a technicality, Wong was there, and Wong had to protect all of these sanctums. So therefore, he was the new Sorcerer Supreme. So that kind of ties into the final end credit scene in Shang-Chi, where he's kind of having that role of be on the lookout for any cosmic threats, whereas Stephen Strange is kind of he's now Wong essentially, but
right, he basically just watches over like the New York sanctum in a way. He doesn't have the full responsibilities that Wong has. Wong has a lot more. So yeah, that part does. But I don't know. We're getting a whole lot going on.
Yes, I agree.
Not a
And
whole
we're
lot
having,
of tie-ins.
I know, and we're having, like, on top of the Marvel movies, right?
The shows.
We also have, the shows and the Sony movies that they're doing that potentially also kind of tie in at some point. This is getting crazy.
I mean,
I don't know how they're going to do it, but listen, they've done it time and time again. I know they have a plan.
but those all had ties is the thing. Like, from the end of Avengers 1, we saw Thanos. And we kept getting things that kept tying into Thanos. And we got stones in other movies. And all that stuff was connected to Thanos. None of this. Shang-Chi to Eternals. No connection at all. Zero connections between those two. One is completely dealing with, celestials outside. And then Spider-Man, once again, we come back to on Earth. I mean, obviously there's the whole multiverse, cosmic aspect of it. But, I mean, I don't understand where all this stuff... And that Hawkeye, obviously, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot going on in Marvel, which obviously Marvel's always entertaining, but I think it's more fun when we all know it's building towards this big Kang. Right, that's what everyone is expecting, the big bad to be Kang, and we got him in Loki, and he's going to show up in Ant-Man and the Quantumanium. But I don't know, it's just getting a little almost confusing in a way. It's like there's so much going on, but none of it's connected, but it's all also supposed to be connected because it's all happening in the same thing, like the same world. Like
We'll find out, dude. We eventually, stuff will come to fruition. We just have to be patient. Unfortunately, all of thinking about it, every movie that came out this year should have came out last year. So we should already be like on the next set of movies by now. But obviously,
Oh yeah, we should have just. I think from the original plan, we should have already seen Doctor Strange. Maybe even Thor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So I don't know. That's just kind of whatever. But I think that's gonna wrap up this episode. Obviously, leave a like, leave a comment down below if we missed anything, if you liked anything, where you think Marvel might be going, if either of us are out of pocket with some of the stuff we're saying here.
Oh shit!
Let us know down below.
Yeah, like him saying that Andrew's the better.
Well, I mean, that's not out of pocket. That's facts.
It is out of pocket. Anyways.
Leave a like. Be on the lookout for our next video, which will be dropping some point next week, right after the Hawkeye season finale, which obviously we're all very excited for that. And also, we have Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter for Marveled Media Podcast. You can follow us on those to keep, up to date with us. And we'll see you guys next time.
Peace.